So while we're waiting for the other two guys to sit down, we'll get these two guys to introduce themselves. Here you go.
Hello, my name is Christopher. I'm working for Telecoming. We're a mobile technology company focused on DCB payments, and we cover the whole value chain of mobile services with the premium content partners like Real Madrid, Paris Saint-Germain, and working closely with operators worldwide and also trying to fight the fraud in the markets and get regulations out there so we can hopefully grow all together with the serious players in the near future and with DCB payments.
Hello, I'm Laurent Frainais. I work at Boku. We are a payment provider specialized in carrier billing. We also provide identity services. And I'm in charge of carrier partnerships over Europe and Americas.
Now, we've just heard in great detail about the gravity of the problem and the technical solutions available. Before we sort of dig more deeply into that, I thought I'd ask Laurent, because it seems to me there's two types of fraud. There's fraud that impacts consumers, but also, to a lesser extent, fraud that impacts the vendors of that are offering carrier billing in terms of consumers, bad actors trying to get services for free or rip people off. So I just thought I'd ask Laurent first how that impacts Boku and their customers and how serious the problem is. And I'm going to walk over to him while I ask.
Thank you, Tim. So what we see at Boku, the main fraud we are suffering from is what we call social engineering. So basically what is happening is that the fraudsters, they initiate a transaction and then they contact the owner of the mobile phone, and they claim they are the bank, they are their uncle, their aunt, their whatever, and they ask for the PIN code they just received. So the victim is sharing the code. And what is happening is that when they share the code, it's exactly when you give your credit card code, the user is getting charged. And then we can see this because then they call our customer service and say, well, I've been charged for a service that I don't know. But we can see that this user, we can see on the logs that this user received the SMS text and that a transaction has been initiated. So our main topic today or currently is trying to fight against this SMS OTP fraud. So we have several techniques that we are currently deploying on the market, and one of these techniques is to try to avoid to send a PIN code to the user. And how we do that? We can do this with what we call phone number verification, silent authentication, meaning that we don't need to send an SMS to the user anymore. We don't need the user to interact or to put a PIN code, because when we send a PIN code to the user, the purpose of this PIN code is to make sure that this user owns the mobile phone. Because if he received the SMS, it means he has the phone and he owns the SIM card. But if he is giving away this PIN code, it's useless. So what we try to do is to avoid to send SMS text to the user and check automatically that the mobile phone number that is transacting is really the right one we have in front of us. And how we do this? When the user is browsing in 3G, 4G, we can see the MSISDN in the data session. So it's like if, to give an analogy, it's like if instead of asking your name, for instance, Tim, and you would answer to me, you would have a badge here and your name is written. So I can read it, so I don't need to ask you anymore. So yeah. This is the main type of fraud we are currently seeing on the network.
And Christopher, I know that you, we were chatting earlier, and obviously this kind of zero-click authentication is important because many people would think, well, the best way to combat fraud is to ask the user who they are and get an authentication back for them. But I know that you think that this actually can lead to worse kinds of fraud.
Yes, exactly. So what you said, that avoiding sending a PIN is one of your objectives, you know, and I believe it's one of the beauty of DCB is a simple payment with 1-2 clicks, and we don't need a PIN authentication. And as soon as operators decide to add further protection to the market because they saw fraudulent happenings in the market and introducing a PIN flow instead of a previous 1 or 2 click flow, they believe it will be more safe. But I mean, just listening to Brian or Roland, it should be clear for everyone that changing the payment authentication to a PIN verification doesn't add any protection nowadays. Maybe 2-3 years ago, yes, but nowadays I think the big fraudulent happenings on applications started in 2017, at least from when we noticed it on a big scale, starting in markets like South Africa, where those apps were still dumb and then evolving and getting smarter and smarter. And so I believe the future of DCB needs to be on having still better payment flow than on other payment methods, and using any of the existing tools which we have now. We have vNovaWatch, we have Evina, we have MCP Shield and many other tools which are doing a good job. And we also need to accept that fraud is there, it will always be there, and there's fraud on PayPal, there's fraud on credit cards. So we need to accept it until a certain degree. So we will never be able to remove it completely, but we need to find a way to deal with it on a small level, you know, and find a common ground there. And it's a combination of the operators getting an understanding of what's happening, and then also on the traffic side we need big changes there, and we need to get used working with all the existing anti-fraud technology which is out there to hopefully win this battle before DCB payments will have a very bad reputation, which can also affect all the nice things which could happen to DCB thanks to PSD2 to have it in paying for more digital and physical goods. But if we don't find a way to secure it further, then this might not even happen on a bigger scale in the future. Yeah.
And do you know what's happening with the EU's efforts to bring in secure customer authentication? Will they allow zero-click authentication for carrier billing?
So I don't know too much about the all the detailed efforts from the European Union about that, but in general, it's the plan to have, and in many countries it's launching, to have already DCB for ticketing, and it's rolling out into different other things. But I mean, also in many countries we see all those negative happenings, you know, which I'm honestly a bit scared sometimes that this might affect the whole reputation of DCB, and we all need to work together now. And I think MEF can also be a part in this, maybe to work on some common regulation, because also operators are listening more to you than to me, and we to sit on one table and come up with a common solution, because we have the tools, and at some point we need to stop talking about this and put some action in it, because I see a threat in many markets right now, and I believe there's a need to put this topic on the map and find solutions for all the markets which are on a threat. So
Roland, you talked about, you gave us an indication of how serious this problem is. Who are these fraudsters? Are they criminal organizations? Are they individual, tech-savvy people who are just trying to earn money on the side? Can you give us an indication of who they are?
I think the most fraud is happening through one-man companies basically. A lot of Chinese students after work, after uni, they're very well trained, and they just sit at night like and try to do something with their knowledge and have some extra money. Is what they think of, and it's not like that they earn thousands and thousands and three-digit thousands of money, but there are a lot of people doing that, and they provide the software solution and sell it on the internet. And I think that around 1,000 different solutions and SDKs, so software development kits, you can use of doing this kind of fraud. So I wouldn't say it's a big mafia behind that. It's more like diverse long tail hacking.
And I'll shout. How do they exchange information? How do they find out? That Brian talked about some of the workarounds and how quickly how they try to get in those workarounds. How are they exchanging information on the latest techniques? Is it the dark web or?
Yeah, there are certainly certain groups that you just get in when you have some reputation, and they have their own system of even like silver, platinum, gold members, and some other like how you say that orden that makes them a certain level of hacking, and then they can access these groups, for example. But I couldn't access them. I mean, I could try with some tricks to do that, and I would love to have a look at that. But though there are also other forums where you just sign up for, and they offer you what was it? Some years ago, I saw that there was a go around. No, I don't have it anymore. But they offered there for 10,000. They tell you, give me that money and bitcoins, and I give you some software. So now it's much cheaper because there are so many in the market. And I think, Brian, what is the price? I think you can get it even now for 100 or so. So it's not much of a money. And then if you make it in an app and then buy installs through site loading, so you as a publisher even bring that to market and buy you into the market and get it spread on the phones, and then can offer very good converting flows. I mean, the shady people speak about web view traffic. I can bring you web view traffic, and everything is clear when this is meant.
Sorry, Brian, I was going to ask you the same question. Is there a community? Are they?
Yeah,
are they competing with each other or cooperating with
in certain countries it's the SPs themselves, which is a bit shocking, and it is a bit shocking. But certainly a very large operator in India said that they reckon 1/3 of the fraudsters were being employed by the SPs. They were literally sitting beside them, which is a bit shocking.
So Roland, you said that malicious apps that seems to be the predominant way of defrauding people now. What kind of apps do they create? How do they create these apps? How do they choose what genres to create them in? What's the most effective way of tricking a consumer into downloading something?
I mean, you have seen this wallpaper app, and there's battery apps, and there are these very cheap apps that personally I don't find very interesting, and even my son wouldn't find them interesting to do. But I guess there are also other applications that are a bit more high value, that look interesting, and they need to be need to have a good marketing strategy. So you have great banners, you have a great story, and make people install your application, and you pay to grow your user base basically for your malicious application. And then it's installed, and that's it. And then you install it, you don't find it's interesting, but you're lazy, you keep it on the phone, you don't deinstall it. I saw it with my son, he got an Android device, and I just gave it to him to learn how people do Android in real life, and you just don't delete it, and you have 100 apps there, lost the control about, and you don't want to wipe the whole phone because there's some games you don't want to lose, and there's so much running.
Can I just add to that, Roland? Thank you. So additionally, the concept of co-opted apps. So these are apps that are purchased, or they are co-opted literally. Somebody has hacked them, has taken them over. So they're pre-installed, so they're out there already. They've got good reviews. Okay, people have complained that there's too much advertising, but still, they have an installed base, and suddenly they upgrade the apps, and next thing you know, you're being defrauded on them. Also, there's a theory about SDKs as well. I have never seen it, that you have apps that don't even know that their advertising SDK is fraud-based. This is one of my guys' theories. I've never seen it, but it does make sense if you think about it, that you have APKs that are completely innocent. They don't know what's going on, and they upload the SDK as basically an ad-based SDK, and next thing it's defrauding. So it's scary. But the install base of apps, that's a big one as well.
Maybe to comment to that. I mean, when I was working for this mobile ad network, where we had these SDKs, we were also having very, very aggressive marketing. Things like dropping icons, for example, that look like a game. You were a fraudster. No, it was not fraud. It was really. I think that was really innovative marketing. There were some companies doing that, and you have like, I don't know, Coca-Cola badge on your phone and 50% off McDonald's. There were real offers behind. So we were a real ad network. It was not like what Jamba was doing or something. So totally different. High quality clients like big brands, for example. And it was nice. Like you have this sitting there, but imagine like you drop something else. I mean, now it's not possible anymore. But there are a lot of ways how to distribute apps that have fraudulent code on it, and to have SDKs that are from. I would agree that there are SDKs that do normal advertising and then have kind of a backdoor and do this kind of things. Then, and I think there's some. I don't want to name and even don't say the country, but I think there are companies doing that. But I can't prove it, and I wouldn't do it actually.
Yeah, I just had a different example. What we 2 years ago, I think we discovered it. I also don't want to blame a name here, but it was, let's call it a kind of VPN service, which was using the mobile data of the phones of the users in several countries, and this service works with an SDK, and a lot of legit apps could use this SDK, and then for all the customers of this VPN service, they could basically, if you want to access a phone, you want a South African IP, you could use this service to connect there, and you would actually connect through the mobile data connection of a real user in South Africa. And we found evidence that this whole big network with the SDK, which was distributed worldwide, was kind of hijacked, and all the misdents of the users were used for being auto-subscribed. And during this time, I saw on our gateway that 20,000 subscriptions came in 1 hour, you know, and at this point we didn't know what's going on, because it was the very early stage where no anti-fraud was out there, and everybody got crazy and didn't know what's going on. And so, yeah, there are big issues in the market, and this is why we need, I think what was very important, what Brian also mentioned in his presentation, is this pen testing of the gateways. I don't see it in many countries. In some countries where we are connecting now, it starts to, it's happening actually, that like independent companies are verifying the security of the gateway. And this is not happening worldwide. I don't know if you know more, Brian, but I don't see it happening in all countries. Yeah, UK, yes, and for me right now in Belgium, yes. So we're going through all this pen testing, which is important, you know, because there are so many loopholes the hackers can use. And I know also by speaking to operators that those hackers are actively making DDoS attacks all the time to their gateways to find any loopholes. So most payment gateways are 24/7 under attack just to find any loophole to get in there. So the hackers are very, very aggressive, and so I don't believe it's. I believe it's only also single users, like you said. Some guys who buys an SDK on the darknet for a couple of $100. But I believe today there might also be some bigger organizations behind it. So I think it's both, but I have no evidence for this.
I think, Christopher. So yeah, to your point, yes, I have an example of one massive fraud attack where it's not individuals but a real organization. and it comes from the carrier side directly. So the mobile operator need to protect also better themselves. So the fraud was the following. So fraudster got some credit cards, stolen credit cards, right? So they got stolen credit cards in hands. Then what they did, they could manage to get prepaid SIM cards from the carriers and activate them. And obviously, when you do that, it means that you have close access to the mobile operators, because you cannot activate a SIM card like this. So what they did is that they loaded money from the stolen credit card on the prepaid SIM cards, right? And once they've done that, they've loaded console accounts or big games accounts with 100 euro on it. And then they go to the dark web and they say, if you pay $30 or 30 euro, you will get an account loaded with 100 euro, right? And they sold hundreds of or thousands of accounts like this. So they made a lot of money, obviously, from stolen credit cards with stolen SIM cards activated by fraudulent people. And here it comes to the point that mobile operators need to seriously protect their SIM cards. And it goes the same goes with SIM swap. If you have employees who at carriers who are beginning to steal SIM card or swap SIM from a user to another, you can be potentially in big troubles.
I suppose the example you've just given there, and maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but it seems like the crime is stealing the credit cards. Actually, what they're doing in terms of buying SIMs and loading them with money, they're not doing anything illegal there, are they? So the problem is that they've stolen the money off the credit cards. So how is the operator supposed to combat a problem like that, whereas actually they're acting legally?
So in the example I gave you, if the carrier had put in place, for instance, an SMS OTP sent to the mobile phone of the owner of the credit card, the fraudster could not have top up the SIM cards. But for an unknown reason, they didn't put this additional check in place. Maybe they didn't want to pay the cost of an SMS, which is nonsense because they don't pay SMS as they are carriers. So it's lack of vigilance, mainly because there are solutions to tackle this. But yes, in this case, it comes from a credit card that topped up a SIM card. So it's a double, very malicious fraud, because you need to get credit card, and then you need to get SIM cards to top up a gaming account that you can resell after. So it's a very smart fraud. And when we discovered this, we were like, how can it happen? And it took us a couple of weeks to understand where it came from. And when you understand, you begin to go back up to the chain and go to stakeholders and ask them to better protect their asset.
So at what point do the police or crime services get involved in? Because you've talked about this wide-scale problem and about a lot of the hackers being individuals. Roland, I'll ask you: is your responsibility to just work with MNOs and let them deal with it, or do you ever talk to the police?
Yeah, actually, we spoke to a lot of German carriers, actually also before all this happened, and trained and educated them what's going on. But as a carrier it's really slow of integrating software. You have very long lead-up time, so they didn't integrate any, and then this thing happened. And what they did then, when it came from C-level down to the wholesale department, they filed charges against unknown. So they went to the police, but this is what they could do. And this is what they need to do to react legally correctly. I mean, it went then to the lawyers actually from O2, and they filed charges. And I think everybody else did the same, but I don't know exactly. But nothing will happen. Nothing. They go.
It's always the regulator.
It seems to me that these fraudsters they're getting shut down and then they're just opening up again. There doesn't seem, from what you've said, that the police or crime services are ever really going after them.
I mean, it's like when you get stolen in Barcelona, you go to the police, you say, they steal my wallet, so nothing happens. What the fraudsters are doing, they get shut down, of course, but you never get their name. You try to get their name, but it's like, it's done with affiliate marketing, right? And this is like a exchange, like it's trading of traffic and retrading, and it's a line of maybe 20 different companies involved. Maybe in the end it ends up again at the very source. So it's really hard to find who's really in the end. Everybody knows who gets the traffic from. But let's say I'm selling a good content. I don't know what it is, but I'm selling a good content and have a contract with an affiliate who brings me traffic. This affiliate has again like a business relationship with somebody bringing them traffic. This has then this, and then you could follow up that. But I mean, the police would not do that.
Do you still pay that guy within 7 days, the affiliate?
Yes, you pay them, and then you can't pay. You don't pay them, for example. You can for sure shut it down.
They're done and dusted in 7 days. They're being paid, yeah.
But in the end, it doesn't matter because you will not find the real source of the problem, right? That's the thing. Like, it's impossible. It's not impossible, but nobody does it because it takes a long time. And then in the end, you have a post address somewhere outskirt of St. Petersburg. I've seen all that, and I did Google Maps. It's like suburbs. This for sure fake addresses. That in the end, these initial guy. Twice I found the initial source, and was once Moscow, suburbia, terrible buildings, but for sure it was not the right address of the guy doing that because he lives somewhere else. Cyprus, I don't know, but it was, yeah.
Do you ever go to the police?
No. It's usually the regulator. No, not on that front. But I think that's why it would be so difficult to implement onboarding. Which would be ideal for the industry now to do kind of like an operation nose clean, go and basically get the real ad networks and affiliates who want to clean their operations up. I'm not sure they want to. I'm not sure that many of them are left at this stage. They've sent their traffic elsewhere. I don't know if anybody else has a view on that. Chris, you would have a view.
Yeah, in general, in the past, as I was working also a bit more on the traffic side in the past, I was trying to educate all our traffic partners. First of all, to do KYC processes with anyone, why would you accept any traffic partner with the company in Belize or whatsoever? And this also applies for operators. I mean, in many countries, I believe operators are still accepting services, cheap HTML5 gaming service from companies registered in Marshall Islands, something like this. And I think this is also one of the small solutions I have in mind which needs to take place on content provider or service provider side, on the network side, that everybody should start doing clear KYC processes and not onboard anyone, and really look, if you cannot find out who's the beneficial owner of the company, then just never work with those guys. And also I try to educate ad networks. If someone is asking you for net 7 or net 14 payments, don't work with them. The industry standard was always like net 30 in the affiliation business, but at some point all those guys came in asking for net 7, net 14 or net 15 payments, and I mean the reason is quite obvious why they want the quick money. And if you pay net 30, you also have enough time to make use of the anti-fraud protection to verify all those transactions. And basically you have at least 30 days to verify all the sales, and then you can stop paying the fraudsters also. So there are a few small, simple things which we could already do, besides of also getting a better understanding of all those problems from operator side, which is, I believe, the most difficult part, because, as you said, it happened last year in November in Germany, and when they really realized what's going on. But I mean, this thing was going on for a long time, and it had been mentioned by you, also by my previous company, to the operators more than 1 year before that date, you know. But nothing happened, and then at some point it blew up and harsh measures were taken, which also impact serious companies and of the bad actors, of course, but they already got their money, and mostly serious companies are being affected by those harsh decisions from operator side.
So Laurent, can your identity services help protect consumers from fraud, as well as helping merchants from, you know, to identify their own customers?
So first, I totally agree with Christopher. I mean, if you want to avoid fraud as much as possible, don't onboard a fraudulent merchant, right? And at Boku, for instance, we do not work with affiliates or company based in exotic countries. And we do full KYC. And we are even stricter than several mobile operators. So sometimes they are like, why don't you let them go? Well, because they don't pass compliance. So in terms of mobile identity services, so Boku acquired a company 18 months ago to get into the identity services. And why we did that is because digital identity, as you know, is more and more important nowadays. We need to make sure that we can prove the identity of the customers, of the user who is currently transacting, and also, so it's not only about carrier billing identity services. It's about proving identity and fight against account takeover. And if you read the regulation or the new legislation around this topic, you see that SMS OTP is not enough. It's not secure enough. If you look at the EBA statement of the ACPR, the Bank de France, and other regulators around the world, even the US, they really want to get rid of SMS OTP, because the point is not the SMS itself. The point is about SIM card possession. How can you prove that the user really owns the SIM card? And the only way you can prove this is to check if the SIM has been changed recently or not. So that's why today in the market you see a lot of fuzz around SIM swap checks, SIM swap controls. You know, everyone is going to SIM swap. It's because of the regulation. We need to prove that the SIM card belongs to the user. And to do this, you have to combine two attributes at the carrier. First, you need to verify the phone number, make sure that the phone number that the user typed into the application is really the right one that you see in the data session, because I can put your mobile phone number, for instance. And two, in the same time that you check that the phone number really belongs to the person, you also check that there was no SIM swap change in between. Because if you check a phone number, but the fraudster already got your SIM card, it's too late, right? So combining these two attributes form what we call the possession factor. And I remind, into the strong customer authentication framework, you have three factors. You have the knowledge, which is a password. You have the inherence, which is biometrics, like fingerprint or facial recognition. And you have possession, which is the fact that you can prove that you possess something. So if you can combine, let's say, the possession with inherence, like you check the phone number and SIM swap in the background silently, and you use a biometric like a fingerprint, you have a double factor authentication, you are safe, right? So this is in this respect that identity services can greatly help to reduce fraud, because you complicate the life of fraudster to hack the account. Yeah.
So obviously, I mean, we talk a lot about smishing and SIM swap fraud in MEF, so we know quite a lot about that topic, regrettably. So obviously, part of that, tackling that is to educate consumers about the dangers of smishing and fraudsters phishing for their details. And similarly, let's keep with education, because Roland, you talked about sideloading being one of the main problems here. Why do consumers go to dodgy Chinese app stores rather than staying on Google Play? Why do they do it?
These app stores are not shady. They are from servers in Germany, from somewhere else, and they really have interesting stuff on it. So it must not. The app store itself is not. I mean, it's the vehicle, but it's the most of them. They're good ones. So. And the reason is why they upload it there is just to have a greater distribution. So they have it in Google, they have it also in the App Store. So also game publishers do it there. Or Fortnite, for example, is side-loaded because they just don't want to pay Google the share of the payment, 30%, or I don't. What is it at the moment? So. Yeah, and actually, I think like this Fortnite side loading, and it's hundreds, millions installs. It's more actually. It trains kids how to side load, because my son needed to do that, and then they think it's normal. Maybe just these warnings they don't read. They just focus on buttons. And so then they install, and it really also needs like education from the parents to the kids. Don't do that. Yes, that was an execution, but see, this is difficult to explain why this is okay and the others is not. So there are several reasons to go around payment, have a better payment scheme. Not necessarily. It's some call it black stores, but Google is doing that. Google is saying these are black stores because they don't want these exist, right? Because they want to own the customer and the billing relationship. So. And
Brian, is there a way of getting these app store providers on board to put in more protections, the way that Google tried to put in protections to prevent this kind of malware?
In some cases, yes. In others, no. What do you think?
I mean, Google is a tech company, right? So, and if they can't manage it easily, so why could a 2-3-man company? And this is what these alternative app stores are. I mean, maybe 20 people, but 10 of them are working in marketing, some 2 in something else supporting, and they have 3 developers. How could they if Google can't? If they would be really smart, maybe yes, one is enough, but I think the case that Google can't do it is the answer.
And you both talked about the limits of registries and how they don't work anymore. Are a registry still being deployed as an anti-fraud technique around the world?
Blacklists.
Yeah, blacklists. Yeah.
We certainly have competitors who use blacklists. Well, they were using them a lot, and some of them are still using them, and they're just useless.
Yeah, I share the same. Though I find still fraudsters putting their really package name in the X requested was that's the technical thing where you can or cannot put the identity of your fraud. So you still see it, and I really think it's fraud, and you could use the blacklist, but it does more harm because you have a lot of false positives, and I think it's more a problem of the false positives than, and you don't find the real fraudsters because they leave it blank or whatsoever. So I wonder sometimes to use it actually in some cases, but maybe a reduced one. But I'm better you don't use it. It's just doing more.
It's going to confuse you.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're kind of towards the end of the session now. So it's been very depressing so far. I think you'll all agree. So let's try and let's try and end on a positive. So, Brian, maybe you can sing a song for us. That would be great. Yeah, maybe you could sort of give us an upbeat note on where you've seen some success and how you feel that we can defeat this problem.
Well, I think as I mentioned earlier, perhaps the idea of attempting to onboard Operation Nose Clean, put together a small group of affiliates ad networks who are happy to enter into some kind of a certification scheme. You would need the network operators on board, and it would take an awful lot of monitoring, certification, so that it would be very attractive for them, and that they will get the best flows, the best outpays if they keep their traffic extremely clean. The question is if they are still there and they're still around. But something along the lines of that would potentially work, and you could build it very slowly per geo. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the first thing is use a good anti-fraud solution on a carrier level. Then yeah, but I think they can do it if they're really interested and want to keep it. And I mean, the carriers don't have any fantasy, right? Where's the vision? Voice and data is a commodity. It's like buying salt or water or whatsoever. So you can't differentiate. So what are they doing? They try to maximize their customer base and sell them electricity, gas contracts, whatever contracts, and that's not much of a fantasy. So I think strategically they will keep carrier billing just because they have it. And it could be also like, I mean, you see like for example, in the EU, they want to make each other independent from the big ones like a Google or Facebook that own basically the ad market and billing companies, Visa and PayPal also owning that payment market. So I don't know, maybe they use carrier billing in the future as a German thing to do that, because there's a future, like if you go to emerging markets or to Africa, everybody's paying with the phone. They don't have any bank, they don't have a bank. It doesn't make sense, but they have a phone and they pay everything with the phone. So this mobile wallet, they call it, I think this got a future, and if you try to replicate that from a emerging market to a highly developed market, maybe that's could be one. So I think they keep it for strategic reason, but are not sure how to really use it. And as a solution, use anti-fraud software, and then hope that the market changes, because there's so much fraud now in the market. They all need to go away and to be replaced by somebody else. And the hope is then this will happen. Right, because buying traffic from Google and Facebook is too expensive, and it doesn't work for this mobile content.
So let's get rid of the fraudsters so they go somewhere else and affect another industry. I think that's the message that we're trying to get across here. So Laurent, Christopher, Roland and Brian, thank you very much, and thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of the deserted Mobile World Congress. Okay, bye.
Sorry, I just wanted to break in, and I came in front. First question is, you didn't talk about Apple, whereas I talk about Google. Should I take that as everything is fine and happy in the Apple domain, and there are no issues there?
Yes. I think in terms of DCB, yes, it's safe. But in other industries like app installs, CPI business, there is some fraud, but not on a massive scale. And there is fraud, but we are all not interesting enough. We are not politicians. We are not CEOs of huge companies. Because there are, for sure, there is malware, but it's very, very expensive. And these marketeers not interesting at all for fraudsters to do that.
Yes, Dario, so I confirm there are much less problem with Apple than Google. The reason is that you are not allowed when you onboard an app on the App Store to bring any other payment method than the one appointed by Apple, which is not the case on the Android store. So because, well, when you use carrier billing on iTunes, it's at iOS level, you know. It's not the app developer who choose which payment method he wants to appoint. So so far so good. No issue with iTunes.
The last question. There it is. So the last question for me. So on one side we got a system which is much closer. This seems to be working fine with its pros and cons. On the other one, you got the open one, which seems to be work fine on generating a lot more of businesses or so on, but at the same time, a lot more of opportunities for fraudsters. And we've seen how the digital, the direct carrier billing right now is under threat. I used to be an operator. I used to look at every product the operator had, and the biggest headache I had was how do I respond to my boards when they get upset about stuff on their carrier billing. It was, and internally, a lot of people just wanted to go away. Well, we've seen it really happening in Australia, I think, in the Nordics. Now, the question to you, and so I mentioned, is what should be done? And what's the best way to go for the industry? Or what MEF can do, if you want.
I would say it's a bit like the last point I mentioned. It's you should know your customer, you know. So why would an operator onboard 10 different clients offering gaming services? So they should start being more picky. They should choose the right companies to work with. So they should look, okay, Telecoming offers this gaming service, GameMine offers this gaming service, and then decide on the products they want to have on their platform and know their customer. Because then, if you have a limited set of companies you're working with, then you as operator X can call me and say, Chris, I've seen an issue and I need to respond to my board. And but right now it's more like operators have so many clients, they don't really want to know them, you know. They, from how I believe it, in many countries it's still like, it's some small company, we don't want to talk to them, I only speak to the gateway. And so I believe operators should work with less companies and with some companies which show face and not hiding behind some shell companies, for example. So I think this is one of the key points. And one thing I wanted to add to Tim's last question is I've seen some good initiatives in certain countries. I think Netherlands, for example, is a country which did a good job in the right direction to start a self-regulating initiative to all content providers who want to get access to DCB there need to register with this authority. They need to pay a yearly fee, and it's on their website. You can see who is there, so everybody knows who's operating there. And then there's a board. If there are issues, you know, they will be addressed and discussed in this board. And the board there consists of service providers, operators, billing aggregators. So and then if there are problems, they discuss all together and make a decision, you know. Also, I know that this model is not yet perfect by speaking to all those local guys, but it's improving, and in general, I think this could be one solution. And we are doing similar things in Spain, being very close with the operators and actually also educating them from a more operative experience what we have as a service provider, and they started listening, and now there is a very not perfect but a very nice environment now which is regulated and where most of the players are playing by the rules, which is the ultimate goal, at least for us. Yeah.
Okay, well maybe I should hand back to Dario, and have we got any more? Is this it? Is this the end? More sessions, more questions? All right, I'll hand over to you, Dario, and you can close.
Well, thank you. But based on that, I hope we have a recording. We got you there, and we have a list of things to do there. I believe at least an education challenge starts from today, showing to some of the operators, some of the enterprises, what solutions and what considerations are there and what solutions are there for payments in general on the mobile and within direct care billings. I think I take from some of you, or from Christopher, a bit of a challenge. If there is there a code of conduct? Is there a list of? I think also Laurent was mentioning some of those as well. Obviously with Brian and Roland, we should follow up some of the real cases you have and some of the experience. So plenty, seems to me, that we might have. Any other comments from you of things that needs to be done or shared? It was a serious but a very valuable, I think, insight on what's going and the value of us being together and sharing this information. I think it's very, very good. So thank you, team, as well. I haven't got much else to say from you apart from they are tapas, but not here. So you have to go and run and get them and be fast before we ever finish all of them, which is in the blue bar. The details, as always, are on website. We'll tell you as well. And I think there might be some transport. I'm not sure about that. No, we don't have transport anymore. But it's some sort of treasure hunt. It's a happy treasure hunt. You can go and find it on the other side of it, but closer to the fun side for the evening. But tomorrow, all the fun is here. As in we start at 11. We have a personal data and identity session, a very interesting one, by the way, with additional topics on AI and regulation, if ever you're interested, but it seems to be pretty interesting. Then we talk about mobile IoT, with something we've done last year as well, so it's a continuation of a good tradition. And finally, as I said, there is a bit of a networking and party. But do please stay and talk to each other right now. We're not going to close the door straight away. There is still some coffee, I think, and some chances for staying here. Thank you all. It's been fantastic to have you. Thank you all for your impact, and I hope to see you tomorrow.